I couldn't help but exclaim when I came home exhausted from work. What the hell is this? The room looked like it had been ransacked. Bags of snacks scattered everywhere. In the center of the room was my mother-in-law and her sisters, slobbering in their sleep. Oh, I didn't notice you came home. You've got quite a nice room, haven't you? My mother-in-law wakes up. Don't be silly. What do you think you are doing? When I shouted out in distress, my mother-in-law clapped her hands and grinned at me. We are going to live here from today. And Mary, you will work for us. Then we'll let you stay here. She said something so outrageous with a breath that reeked of alcohol. Susan and Anna, my mother-in-law's sisters, are also grinning with wine glasses in their hands. It's a little crumpled, but we'll just have to put up with it. I mean, it's a house with a maid. That's right. Oh, Mary, make me something to eat. The three of them laughed so loudly that the neighbors might complain and chucked the wine. As I was dumbfounded, I'm home. I heard a cheerful voice calling. I suppressed my anger and head for the front door, where I found Derek taking off his shoes, also reeking of alcohol as expected. He did tell me beforehand that he was going to have a drink at the company reception, but the current situation was just making his return more annoying than ever. Derek, your mothers are making a terrible joke about them living here from today. Please do something about it.
Oh, come to think of it, I did get a message saying something like that. It said there was going to be a drinking party today, so are they still drinking?
I couldn't help but let out a what in a low voice. Are you serious? What are you going to do about the money?
They said they are going to put in some money as living expenses. So Mary, you can take care of the housework. I'm actually a little hungry, so can you make me a quick midnight snack?
Derek made his way into his room to change his clothes. When I returned to the living room, the three of them were lying down on the floor again, with their dumb-looking sleeping faces. I see a glass wine bottle lying on the floor. I couldn't contain my anger and picked it up. I met my husband Derek at work. At the time, I was working in sales for a food company. Derek was one of our clients, so we often saw each other, and since we both liked to drink, we got along right away. The year after we met, we started dating. We went to many good places for drinks and had drinks at home as well. Derek was a good boyfriend, a little witty at times, but always cheerful and optimistic. 2 years later, we got married and bought a house near my in-laws' house. It's spacious for the price, gets a lot of sun, and in a safe neighborhood. Derek gets along very well with his family, so we decided on it almost immediately. But that was the beginning of the mistake. I'm so hungry. Mary, hurry with the dinner. Are you going to have dinner here today too? What's with that tongue? You don't have to be so sarcastic. Come on, get it ready. Soon after we moved into our new house, my mother-in-law began to visit us almost every day. I had changed my job when I got married, so I certainly had more time on my hands. However, I was planning to use my free time to study for a certification. My mother-in-law came over to my house as if she was trying to get in the way, but I had no choice but to deal with her because I knew I could not disrespect my husband's mother. In retrospect, no matter how bad the atmosphere became, I should have firmly rejected her. Eventually, Susan and Anna, my mother-in-law's sisters, started coming to the house. Oh no, we don't have any more snacks. Make sure you buy some. I'm opening the new bag of tea. Susan and Anna are both divorced. If this is how they treated their husbands, it's no wonder they got divorced. But no matter how ill-mannered they were, To Derek, they are his close relatives. With this in mind, I continued to endure being treated like a maid. When the stress was getting to the point where I couldn't even manage my daily life, my mother-in-law and her sisters went away for a few days for a trip. I thought it was now or never, so I talked to Derek, but he didn't take me seriously at all.
My father just passed away, and they probably miss him. Don't get so uptight.
But our food bill is going up. If we keep going like this, we are going to have to cut into our savings.
What? That's just because you're not very good with money. I'm getting paid more now, and I'm putting in money for living expenses. So shouldn't that be enough?
When you say you are getting paid, it's just a few tens of dollars. But I was too exhausted to argue with him. 3 years have passed since then. I wondered how long I would have to continue living in this kind of hell. I thought so, but I was not yet at the bottom of hell. One day, my personal belongings start disappearing. Accessories, cosmetics, and other small things would disappear one after the next. Thinking that my mother-in-law and her sisters were the only ones who could do this, I started using a locked drawer. I began to keep everything I didn't want to be taken in there. But, no way! Why is the lock broken? The things I put inside are gone too. It was unforgivable that they would do such a thing, so I questioned my mother-in-law and her sisters. But of course, all three of them refused to tell me. Oh no, a thief must have broken in. That's scary. It's not safe to leave the house unattended. Why don't you come over more often, Anna? Yeah, that's a good idea. The three of them sat as they watched TV and devoured snacks. The snacks and tea out on the table were all prepared by me. I bit my lip and clenched my fist in anger. One day, when I came from work, I heard my mother-in-law and her sisters laughing from outside. I couldn't help but exclaim when I came home exhausted from work. What the hell is this? I walked in, suspicious, only to be greeted by an unbelievable sight. There were cardboard boxes piled up in the living room, and it looked like they belonged to the three of them when I checked the content. In the middle of the cluttered room, the three of them were having a drink. Perhaps noticing my presence, my mother-in-law approached me in a good mood. We're going to live here from today. And Mary, you will work for us. Then we'll let you stay here. She said something so outrageous with a breath that reeked of alcohol. Susan and Anna, my mother-in-law's sisters, are also grinning, with wine glasses in their hands. It's a little cramped, but we will just have to put up with it. I mean, it's a house with a maid. That's right. Oh, Mary, make me something to eat. The three of them laughed so loudly that the neighbors might complain, and chugged the wine. As I was dumbfounded,
I'm home.
I heard a cheerful voice calling. I suppressed my anger and headed for the front door, where I found Derek taking off his shoes, also reeking of alcohol as expected. He did tell me beforehand that he was going to have a drink at the company reception, but the current situation was just making his return more annoying than ever. Derek, your mothers are making a terrible joke about them living here from today.
Oh, come to think of it, I did get a message saying something like that. It said there was going to be a drinking party today. So, are they still drinking?
I couldn't help but let out a what in a low voice. Are you serious? What are you going to do about the money?
They said they were going to put in some money as living expenses. So Mary, you can take care of the housework. I'm actually a little hungry. So can you make me a quick midnight snack?
Derek made his way into his room to change his clothes. When I returned to the living room, the three of them were lying down on the floor again. As I glared at their dumb-looking sleeping faces, I felt anger welling up in me. I'm sick and tired of being pushed around by these people. I hurriedly called my friend, who worked as a lawyer. I've talked to her about my relationship with my in-laws for some time, so she agreed to come over. I left the house with a whole case of documents that I had hidden in a secret place. She said she would come to the nearest cafe, so I headed there. I gobbled up some pasta there as I felt my blood boil. When I finished eating, I received a call. I decided to invite that person to come to my house as well, so I texted back. Soon after, my friend arrived and we headed to my house. I opened the door to see Derek and the others were gathered in the middle of the living room for some reason. I told my friend lawyer to wait outside the door and looked down at Derek. "Hey, you hit Derek!" "Huh? What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb. Here's a proof." My mother-in-law pushed Derek's back. Derek's nose was stuffed with tissues, and a bump had formed on his forehead. Derek looked at me with a look of pain on his face. My mother-in-law points at me, spitting as she shouts, "You did this, didn't you? Pay up the alimony!"
Yeah, we're against violence.
I sighed and slammed the divorce papers I kept in the top of the document case onto the table. Then, I opened the cupboard in the living room. I take out the surveillance camera I secretly set up and place it in front of everyone. And Derek and the others look at me with stunned expressions on their faces. Here's the truth. Let's all take a look. Since the camera is linked to my phone, I showed my phone to everyone. I hit the play button, and the phone shows the room as it was a few minutes ago. I see Derek coming into the living room in a good mood after getting undressed. Derek walks in, saying something to his mother and her sisters, who are already drunk and asleep. The next thing I know, Derek stumbled on the wine bottle and falls head first. The sound wakes the others from their sleep, and then rush to Derek. You already see who is responsible for this, don't you? Doing this won't make any difference. All you had to do was clean up the mess properly. Even though you are the ones drinking? It's your job to clean. It's crazy of you to set up something like this in the first place. You want to make it my fault, don't you? I didn't expect anything from these people, but I didn't think they would be this bad. I switched over to the footage the camera took a few days ago and showed my phone to them again. It's the footage of my drawer lock being broken. There they were, my mother-in-law and sisters, breaking the lock and stealing my things. The three of them must have felt cornered as their faces began to turn pale. The reason why I set this up was because I wanted to know who was stealing my things. I guess thieves can be closer than you think, eh? Well, that's...
Wait a minute. Sure, maybe it was wrong of them to steal, but you knew I was hurt because you saw through the camera, didn't you? Then you're the perpetrator too, for being a bystander.
Derek's absurd argument made me burst out laughing. I wanted to ask myself why I had married such a man. I led my friend lawyer into the room and put the divorce papers on the table in front of Derek. I saw it just now and came back in a hurry because I was so surprised. I wouldn't have wished for you to get hurt, even though we would be getting a divorce. Unlike your family, my heart is not rotten. And I told him that the house is in my name. The house was purchased by my parents, and I had the documents to prove it. When I told them to pay for the room cleaning and for the stolen items, Susan and Anna started to fight back. Hey, that's not what I heard. Yeah, I moved out of my apartment because you told me that I couldn't live comfortably here. Are you telling me it's my fault? It was Susan who brought the wine in the first place. While the three of them were arguing, Derek approached me. He apologizes to me with tears streaming down his face. I was about to say it was too late to apologize, when the doorbell rang. I shouted, "Come in!" toward the front door, and a woman appeared.
Aunt Emma!
"Oh, Derek, you've gained so much weight. And why do you look so miserable?" Emma takes off her sunglasses and smiles beautifully. I could feel the atmosphere of the place change. My mother-in-law and my sisters look uncomfortable, huddled around each other. Emma is my late father-in-law's sister. She runs a company and has a huge amount of money. When my father-in-law's company went bankrupt, she helped him pay off his debts and took care of his new company until it recovered. For this reason, my mother-in-law was completely indebted to Emma. Susan and Anna went to the same school as Emma, and they were also afraid of her. They were so stubborn that they didn't show up at the family gatherings, no matter how big of the feast it was. Derek, too, has been afraid of Emma ever since he was spanked as a child. Of course, it was not for no reason, but because of Derek's mischief. As for me, I met Emma through work. I liked Emma because she was very caring and straightforward, even though she was strict at times.
I can't believe you let Mary, who is so good at her job and so kind-hearted, go through this. You should be sorry.
But that's...
No excuses. All of you, sit on the floor.
With that, Emma began to lecture the four of them. They were fighting back so much until then, but all of them fell silent. The sermon went on for about an hour, and by the time it was over, Derek had stopped talking. Then, I made him sign the divorce papers in front of my friend and Emma. He also signed a written agreement that he would pay me alimony and any savings he had to use. And so, the years of hell finally came to an end. Well then, cheers! I gulped down the chilled beer. Is this what you call the taste of victory? It tasted several times better than the beer I usually drink. I was having a girls' night out with some of my girlfriends. But I had no idea that your ex-husband was Derek. I was so surprised when I heard. I know, right? Well, thank you for helping me out. No problem at all. But I want to hear more about it. After the divorce was finalized, I immediately sold the house. My mother-in-law and her sisters, who no longer had a place to live, were apparently working in a warehouse at Emma's company. They were put in a particularly tough department, and I heard they are struggling every day. Emma had paid for the cleaning of the house and the stolen items for the time being, and they were forced to work until they were able to pay it off. Derek's performance at the company had dropped dramatically, and he apparently had been demoted. One of the people I'm having a drink with today is a colleague of Derek's. She and Derek's went to the same school, and we happened to run into each other at the station. When I told her about the divorce, she spread the rumor in the company, and Derek's credibility was destroyed. Derek goes to work feeling ashamed of himself, but he thinks it's better than working at Emma's company, so he makes sure to show up every day. Emma laughed and said,
"Don't worry, I will have him work for me as soon as he fails to pay back the money."
I really wonder why I married that guy. Yeah, I understand that feeling. Well, it's a heartbreak drinking party today, so let's all laugh it off. That's right. And so, our laughter echoed throughout the place.
Divorce me, because I can't take care of you. I want to be free.
He started saying that as soon as I was put in a wheelchair. I didn't expect him to say that to me after spending 40 years together. I had plenty of complaints about my husband, but to be told like that after being together for over 40 years and thinking we were family is just, it's too late to regret giving me up, the wife who would have done anything for him. My name is Mindy. I'm 67 years old, and I have been buying all kinds of skincare products because I'm worried about my cracked and crusty skin. I'm 67 years old. I'd like to have soft skin again. Is it too late for me? No. My heart is still young and healthy, so I should be fine. I can say that now. But my heart used to be so full of life. That was about 3 years ago. I was in troubled relationship with my husband Greg. We have been living on our pension since we retired a few years ago. My husband, who was a high school graduate and a general manager of a major construction company, started acting like a boss at home, perhaps as a reaction to his resignation from the company. My husband and I used to be very close. His father, and my father for that matter, is also a patriarchal man. I grew up in the countryside, and it was common for my friends to have a domineering husband. Because of this, I was strangely convinced that wives were treated like this everywhere. Nowadays, people are saying, a husband who is domineering towards his wife is not a good husband. I feel that this is true though. My stubborn husband and Regina, our only daughter, have always been at odds with each other. As an adult, she is in touch with me, but she and my husband are estranged. Even my daughter rejects him. I must be the only one who can get along with my husband. If it's his domineering nature, I could accept it because I'm used to it. After retirement, my husband started to nag me about how I didn't clean the house well enough, or how inefficiently I did the housework, and I honestly thought it was a nuisance. When I asked him if he wanted to have lunch, he would say,
"Just something simple."
And when I served him a simple meal, he would get angry at me for cutting corners. When I was cleaning the kitchen, he would say that the drains were not clean enough. I was just about to do it. I could see that my husband would surely block me if I said that. When I argue with him, he thinks he can just cut me off. He has a temper, and it happens unnecessarily. If that's all there is to it, I should just let it go. But lately, my husband has been losing control of his anger due to his age, and he sometimes throws a cup at me. So I have been refraining from talking back as much as possible. At work, he would get angry at his subordinate with a smug look on his face, and I guess that's where he used to release some of his stress. That's gone. I feel like everything is pointed at me now. One day, when the topic of divorce came up on TV, it hit me so hard that I couldn't think of it as someone else's problem. I was shopping when I collided with a bicycle and fell down, breaking my knee and requiring an operation. My husband, who was standing next to me at the time of the accident, said to me while I was in pain,
"You are exaggerating."
He looked at me coldly and quickly went home. When a passerby kindly arranged for an ambulance and I was admitted to the hospital, my husband threw the least amount of luggage and documents to the receptionist and didn't even accompany me to the surgery. And the day after the surgery,
"What are you going to do about the house?"
When my husband finally came to visit me and asked me that, I couldn't help but think, huh? What? I asked back, what was this crazy husband talking about?
"I'm talking about the house. I had no choice and did it. But what are you going to do from now?"
My leg feels like it's going to hurt. Can you just do it yourself until I can feel my feet again? I was frustrated by the stress of being in a hospital, and I told my husband what I really thought. Naturally, my husband was furious. He started to make a big fuss in the hospital room with his own thinking that his wife was lazy and not prepared enough to take care of the house. The nurses immediately rushed to the room and picked up my husband. But needless to say, the other patient looked at him scornfully. It's hard to have a husband with a temper. I have one too. My friends were living in other places, so I had no one to talk to about my relationship with my husband. The hospitalization was a disaster, but it was great to have someone to talk to about family problems and learn about other families. It also allowed me to be objective about what a crazy person my husband really was. I was in the hospital for about 3 months and did rehabilitation every day, but I didn't recover as well as I would have liked, so I became wheelchair bound. Thanks to the fact that I spent a lot of time in the hospital talking about my husband's complaints with others, I felt mentally refreshed, as if a burden had been lifted off my shoulders compared to before I was hospitalized. My husband's visits to the hospital were restricted due to the coronavirus, and I have not seen him at all since he made a fuss in the hospital room. We've only exchanged messages about where the fabric softener was, at the very least. It seems that he was able to live a decent life on his own. I'm sure my husband is not all that bad. After all, we've been together for over 40 years. I should not give up on him just because he is getting older and angrier. But I should be a forgiving wife who can let bygones be bygones. I was trying to change my mind, but my husband didn't come to pick me up, even though I had told him about the day I was going to be released. It was impossible for me to go home alone by train and bus, as I was not familiar with using a wheelchair. I had no choice but to call a taxi by myself, and as soon as I unlocked the front door, my husband came.
Why did you come home?
He yelled at me. Why? Did I? I told you. I'm leaving the hospital today. Why didn't you come get me? I was shocked.
How can you say that after making me do the housework for months? Shouldn't you apologize?
Huh? What are you talking about? I was in the hospital, you know. We were both getting old. You could at least support me at a time like this.
No!
I was stunned by my husband's unhesitating refusal.
They told me at the hospital, you know. You are going to be in a wheelchair. I don't want to take care of someone who is going to be in a wheelchair. Divorce me because I can't take care of you. I want to be free. Even though I'm alone, I know I can do the housework and clean. I will never be as good as you after decades of housework. But I'd rather live on my own than live with the burden of having to take care of an old woman with a bad leg.
I was stunned that he thought that way when I heard his complaints one after another. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I had believed that my husband's personality was just distorted after retirement, but that he was still the same, and that after 40 years together, we still had some sort of affection for each other. It is true that the words divorce at a ripe old age had been floating around in my mind, but I thought I would never choose that path simply because I had a longing to be a free woman. We've had our fights, but we've always managed to get along, and I assumed that we had a good track record and would continue to do so. Are you sure? You will regret it. When I asked my husband, he said,
I would never do that.
Okay. Let's get a divorce. I will be out of here by the end of the day. Since you're the one who asked, can you help me pack my bags?
It's not that big of a deal. You are leaving anyway.
I almost cried a little when I saw my husband smiling so contentedly, but I held it in. Oh, how easy my marriage was. It's a bitter story to think that it will end with a short exchange of divorce me, and I understand. Then my husband and I divorced as we had declared, and I spent my days working hard in rehabilitation. Rehab was tougher than I had imagined, but my rehab teacher was kind, and I made many friends around the same age, so I was able to continue to have fun. Then one day, I received a call on my cell phone from my husband. It had been a few months since my divorce, but my belongings were still in the house. I asked him what was left, thinking that I could have him throw some of it away, but he was adamant about not telling me. He said he didn't want to mail it because the post office was too far away, I was afraid to go to his house because I thought it would be too much trouble. So I set a meeting place at a busy park near his house. On the day of the meeting, my husband was waiting for me at the park in his wheelchair. His hair sticky and his clothes shabby. What happened? He didn't answer my question, and he looked at me again.
Why aren't you in a wheelchair?
He asked. It was just a broken bone. It was a slow recovery, and now, as you can see, I can walk around with a cane. Didn't they explain that to you at the hospital when I came in?
No,
You didn't hear about my surgery because you weren't interested, right?
That's right.
Huh, you're the worst. So, you look... What's wrong with you?
I'm asking you out of shame. Please remarry me.
For the second time in my life, my husband proposed to me. Why are you talking about this? I asked him, and he began to tell me the story of his life. Apparently, the reason he was in a wheelchair was because he had fallen off a riverbank on his bicycle and damaged his knees. I couldn't help but say, I told you so. My husband enjoys cycling on his cross bike, but he has a habit of going too fast. He fell and broke his ribs a few times when he was younger. Thank goodness he didn't cause any problems for others. I often advised him to refrain from driving too fast, saying, I know it's your hobby, but it's dangerous. But of course, my husband would not listen to me. And as a result, he ended up in a wheelchair, which I can only say was his own fault.
The hospital suggested that I use a home care service, but I don't want a complete stranger taking care of me.
You will just have to live with that.
I can't. I want to remarry you. As you can see, I can't take a bath or wash my clothes. I can't stand it. Help me.
You came here without a bath? That's a selfish thing to say. Do you really think anyone will accept such a messy proposal? How could you think of remarrying and having me take care of you when you thought you'd confined to a wheelchair? Of course it's impossible. You don't have anyone to rely on anymore. Wouldn't life with a cane be easier than life in a wheelchair?
No. What you're saying is too much.
He's a man who has always done nothing, so he takes it for granted that someone will do something for him. But absolutely not. I don't want to remarry because you're a pain in the butt. I want to be free, okay? When I said no to his proposal, it was as if I was giving back his words at the time of divorce, when I asked if he was serious. To me, your proposal now is more like, are you serious? You are so brazen and shameless. I replied with a smile.
Think again. You abandon me like this?
My husband keeps ranting. Abandonment is not a very nice thing to say. In such a state, a wife would. No, I'm a stranger now, so you can't rely on me. It was you who gave up on me in the first place. The accident, your condition, it's all your fault. You can live the rest of your life with your dirty hair and shabby clothes and not bathe at all. I had said all the things I wanted to say, things I never said in the divorce. I was right. You're going to regret this, see? My husband seems to realize that there was nothing he could do about it, and he was completely done. At the time of the divorce, I thought, he's a man who has taken it for granted to work hard for many years. So even if living alone seems easy now, the day will come when he will get hurt. I never thought it would turn out this way.
Enough! I will give up on you and have Regina take care of me.
I don't think that's possible.
What?
Regina already lives with me. I mean, she hates you. Her husband hates you. And you think you can count on her now? My husband stood there stunned at my words. I think he really wanted to rely on our daughter. I wonder if the bike ride had messed with his head too. Well, I guess there's really no one else to turn to. But why don't you just ask for home care? By the way, there are 3 reasons why my husband's only daughter hates him. The first is that he was too much of a domineering husband. Not only me, but he even tried to make my daughter buy alcohol for him while we were eating. I'm not your slave! She hated him. Secondly, he often introduced his subordinates to my daughter, hoping that he could get one of his own men to marry her. Of course, I stopped him, but he often brought his subordinate to our house for dinner, saying that he did not intend to introduce them, and my daughter could not stand the atmosphere of what seems to be a blind date and became angry. Third, when my daughter got married, my husband heard that one of her husband's siblings had a limp.
You want my daughter to take care of him?
He vehemently opposed their marriage. Regina's husband declared that he had no such plans and would not let her do that, but my husband did not believe him. He originally wanted to marry his daughter off to a good man. I understand his concern for his daughter, but it would have been better if he had only opposed the marriage out of concern for his daughter. But instead, he spoke out of turn, questioning her brother-in-law's morals without even knowing him well enough. If I were to reproduce those words here, I would be flamed at once. I could understand my husband's feelings, but there was no way he could convey his true feelings to my daughter after he had spoken out in such a foul manner, saying that it was a result of his excessive concern for her in his own way. My daughter got married as if they were eloping. I was the only one who did not oppose the marriage, so we kept in touch afterwards. But as I said before, my husband has been estranged. There was absolutely no room for him to live with his daughter and her husband in that house. In the end, their married life is going well, and she is living comfortably as a full-time housewife. I can say that their marriage was a good decision. In fact, I feel sorry for my daughter because I'm now the one who depends on her now, that I'm divorced and don't have anywhere else to go. But my daughter Regina says, I really like your beef stew, so please make it again when you get well. I was glad to hear her say that. When I told him about our situation, he said,
Then what should I do?
You're not a baby. You can figure it out on your own, right?
Well, no.
I have my daughter waiting in the car. Take care. I said that and left. I'm a woman walking with a cane, and he's a man in a wheelchair. He could have caught up with me if he tried, but he didn't. He was just stunned. I remember he just looked down. After that day, my husband contacted me again, asked me to meet him again because he hadn't given me the things that I had left behind. But since my husband was empty-handed that day, I assumed that he was just bluffing, so I didn't accept his invitation. He seems to have lost his mind and asked for a helper. But just like his attitude toward me, he'd say, Do this, do that. The helper seems to have lost her temper and abused him with all kinds of foul language. Of course, the helper was punished and stopped coming to my husband's home. But my husband seems to be traumatized by the incident. He is now a bit suspicious of people. It seems that the usually strong-minded people are weak once they were bullied. The current helper seems to be kind, but my husband is still scared and wants me to come back. I don't want to play into his hand. On the other hand, my legs are much better, and I can go for a walk easily, though not as smoothly as I could before the injury. I go for a walk with my daughter and grandchildren when it's a sunny day, because I hear that if I don't walk, the condition of my leg will get worse. Sometimes, my daughter Regina drives us to a nearby field where there is a little slope, and we often have a picnic together. I had planned to leave this house when I could walk, but Regina told me that the children are attached to me, and if I did not mind, I could stay here with them. So I decided to stay. Unlike my husband, her husband takes care of himself and helps my daughter with the housework. She is a really good girl and takes the initiative in supporting me. I am happy to have such a wonderful family after my divorce from my husband. Thank you, dear. Suck it up.